2011. Roll call. Newcomb Clark. Here. Russ Collins.
Here.
Bob Gunzel.
Here.
Lee Gunn.
Here.
Roger Hewitt.
Here.
John Heathja.
Here.
Joan Lowenstein. John Mowat.
Here.
Nader.
Yes.
Keith.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
And John Split. Sorry.
Here.
Got a little informal there. We have a quorum. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. The first order of business after the roll call is the public hearing on proposed parking meter rate increases. Let me say a couple things for the record. First of all, our parking agreement with the city requires that we have a public hearing on the parking meter rate or proposed rate increases. We've also distributed some other proposed changes in the parking system. And so I think at this public hearing we would take comments on both the meter rate increases and the other proposed changes. So we welcome your comments. Each person will have 3 minutes. We're meeting with the City Council on Monday, November 14th to talk about the parking system in general, and we'll also be discussing these modifications. The present plan is to adjourn this public hearing today and reopen it at our December meeting. So there will be plenty of time for public comment both before and after we talk to City Council. Let me say also that there's 2 other places in the agenda for audience participation on other subjects. So if you would limit your comments here to the parking modifications that are being considered by the DDA. My partner here, John Split's going to keep track of the time. As I said, each person will have 3 minutes. So, having said that, this public hearing is open for public comment. Come on up and give your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. I'm Maura Thompson from the Main Street Area Association. Do you want my home address?
No.
Okay.
We know where to find you.
Okay. I'm here today to thank this DDA board and staff for all of the thoughtful work that went into coming up with the proposed changes to this parking plan. We as an association really do understand the complexities that you all face in coming up with a plan that not only satisfies the financial obligations that you're under, but also that satisfies the needs of your customers. And by customers, I mean the public and our downtown businesses. And I completely understand that that's a very tall order. Many of our downtown businesses were, as you all know, strongly opposed to extending evening enforcement hours. This was something that we felt would have a negative impact on our downtown. We really appreciate the fact that in this current proposal, you have elected not to extend evening enforcement hours. This is something that we not only truly appreciate, but we feel very encouraged. We feel that you not only really listened to the concerns of our members, but that you really heard us. So for that, I thank you and look forward to continuing to work together on behalf of our downtown.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Maggie Ladd from the South University Area Association, and I would just like to thank you all for your hard work, and we appreciate that evening enforcement will not happen. I'd just like to echo everything that Maura said, and further, on behalf of the art fairs, we would just like to say that we have no objection to the raising of the fee for art fair parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ali Malawi, owner of Jerusalem Garden, resident of the 5th Ward. I'm a neighbor to the project there, the Nightmare on 5th, the underground parking structure. So I've been watching the developments of this board and the actions and decisions and the reasons it has to take, the steps that it's taking. As a business owner, as a community resident, as someone who has a lot of people who live in downtown and come downtown, I believe the steps some of the recent steps are actually choking off downtown. I think the continuous rate increases, the complexity in the structure is becoming discouraging for a lot of people to come downtown. You know, a lot of businesses in downtown, other than bars and nightclubs, are struggling to stay alive. I think we need to try to make it easier and encourage more people to come downtown. And I'm happy, just like the other speakers spoke of, that the extended enforcement hasn't been pursued. I think that would have been a nail in the coffin. Now I understand that there's some relationship between the DDA and the city, and I'm becoming uncomfortable with some of the back and forth nature of it all. You know, the reason for this latest rate increase is to come up with the 17% that the city is asking for in their latest agreement. That's fine, but the mission statement of the DDA is not to balance the city's budget. That's not a part of the charter. Now, the city and the DDA have a very weird relationship right now. You got $2 million going back to the city this year that wasn't required. You got the city forgiven the TIF excessive funds that were captured by the DDA. So there's this back and forth, and the lines are becoming very blurred. And I think we need to get back to providing services for the people and the businesses in the downtown, and not worry so much about balancing the city's budget. I think everybody needs to learn how to live within their own means. That's what we're all asked to do as business owners and as consumers now and citizens in America. And I don't believe that going back to the well each and every time that we run into a deficit problem to raise rates is a way to solve the problem. The well is going to run dry, and the DDA needs to look at users of the system more than just dollar signs to somehow balance their budget. They need to find a way to live within their means, and it's not an easy job. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying continuous rate increases are harming businesses in downtown.
Thank you.
My name is Andrea David. I'm connected to the Herb David Guitar Studio. And as everybody will tell you, of course, we do appreciate that you are not having the late hours. But I do think, because you've killed practically our store, Ollie's business, and then the Earthen Jar, because of the parking structure and how long it's continued. And now we did speak to the mayor, and they are going to do something about the lights, because we were robbed, because it's just a dark hole over there. Our students, there's no place for them to park. They don't quite get it where they should park, that you have to go around the corner. There's no signage. So you've done a lot of things just to have this huge parking structure. So what I'd like you to consider is raising the rates, because I know you will do it, raising the rates once you have the structure in place, and not putting more burden on just small businesses, because we won't be there for your diversity plan, if that's still the plan for the DDA. So I don't see why, since you've made us wait through many months of construction, why we can't wait until that opens. Because I don't know what you plan on charging for everyone to park in this big structure, because that's going to take the load off the street. So I think it needs to be a consideration that you move that date, because these are the down months for sure. I mean, it's been very difficult. But in January, when you want to raise the rates, it's deathly. So once you raise the rates, that will completely, take our business out for sure. Because no one comes. They don't know how to get there. They don't even, they used to come to our store just to see it. But people they don't want to deal with it. When you drive up, it just, it's a big blank. You can't get through. So please make that consideration about changing the time of raising the rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Sir.
I'm J.C. Potts, Pangea Piercing on Liberty. I'm just wanted to tell y'all that, because I mean, and I know that people have told you all this before, but you know, everything that y'all do that makes it a little more unattractive for the driving people to come to downtown. I mean, we all want to be pedestrian friendly. We all want to be bike friendly, but we also really, a lot of us really need those people from those surrounding areas that only drive. The number one complaint I hear at our business is about parking. When pressed further for more details, honestly, it's not usually the lack thereof or even the cost of it. Most of the time it's the aggressive enforcement. It's the fact that, you know, you run 10, 15 minutes over, and while we don't have the resources to go out and do a bunch of other things, we have the resources to have a whole army of people downtown to make sure that you get that ticket on the car almost immediately. I get about $200 of tickets a month. I won't park in the structures. I have a convertible. It's just going to get broken into. So I'm not going to park in the structures. I have to park on the street. I have to drive in, too, because I can't afford downtown lease rates. And just to let you all know, I mean, luckily I am in the position that we're not all eggs in one basket, but I'm not expanding my operations in downtown Ann Arbor at all. We're expanding on Pittsfield. We're expanding in Ypsilanti because that's what the market's dictating. People are asking, please, don't make me have to drive to downtown Ann Arbor anymore. The goose can be killed, or the goose with the golden eggs can be killed if you just keep putting up enough roadblocks to people wanting to come down here. They will eventually stop. I mean, Briarwood's opening new businesses. Have you looked at Liberty lately? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Herb David. I got to say that I endorsed what everybody has been saying so far, and I'm going to amplify it, saying that the goal of, whatever the goal of this construction has been, to make a more vital downtown area, it's devitalizing all the businesses that have been there for some time, and it's encouraging. You know, there's a song that Leadbelly wrote that sang back there about Washington, said it's a bourgeois town. Ann Arbor is becoming a franchise town. The only places that people that can afford to be in this area are franchises now. Herb David Guitar Studio is threatened. It may go out of business before February, March, April, so early part of the year. Why? Because of what this gentleman was talking about, parking. People have been long-time customers, don't want to deal with it. The way the whole area has been worked in, it's almost impossible to get anywhere without spending an incredible amount of time driving around trying to find something. So a good old customers of mine saying, gee, I just can't come down here anymore because it takes me so long to get here. So when you've done a lot of good things in the spirit of making it a vital downtown, I'm saying you're devitalizing it by being the traditional old businesses that are here that threatening our existence. I've been in business 50 years, and now and when you started the construction, before that my business was accelerating at about 4 or 5% a year, steadily every year. As soon as the construction started, it took a nosedive down 40%, 45%. As soon as it's very much related to the construction, okay, so you want to do some things that are positive for the city. There's some contention about what that really means, but I think if you follow this track of increasing the parking rates on top of not having access to our place, you really, what you're destroying is the traffic of people coming by car. Sundays, we're doing a little bit better than the rest of the week because Sundays people can drive around and get a free parking place or whatever it is. The rest of the week, you can just walk at the tomb in our place. We can't pay our bills. That can't go on for very long. So if you delay, I'm sort of in favor again of delaying this raising the parking rates and further reducing the possibility of people coming downtown. We're all suffering from the lack of parking, the lack of ability for people to park downtown. That's not to mention the fact that we have asked for improvements that will help us, like the lighting has been horrible. It was dark. For the first time in 50 years, I was broken into because it was a dark alley and there's no way to see anything going on at night. So I complained about that, and finally you put in some Christmas lights, a string of Christmas lights, which did no good, absolutely very little good. It's like
finish up your time. So.
Okay, I've said what I want to say. So just don't consider raising the parking rates afterwards, not now. After you've increased the lighting and you say you're going to put in some new lighting and things and the sidewalks. After you do that.
Thank you.
That eerie introduction.
Was that your sign?
My name is Deanna Relier. I'm going to speak for the Carytown area. We have benefited so much from DDA improvements and DDA thoughtfulness in the past years, and we thank you for that. And again, I endorse Maura's thank yous for all you've done, and I'm really sorry that you as a board have had to deal with this shortfall from the city and so forth, and that your more creative sides have been left in the dust. I know that there were plans to improve Fifth Avenue that had to be axed, and we look forward to maybe a future there. But we want to sort of reinforce the fact that raising parking rates and aggressive enforcement and so forth are all kind of go together to make our customers think twice about coming and having to have that sort of thing in their brain about parking in Ann Arbor. And we do get, the Carytown area is kind of different than the rest of the town. We get people who come, it's a destination, and people stay for hours. They'll have dinner, they'll go to the market, they'll come to a concert. They need to know that something is taken care of. We don't necessarily mind raising parking rates. We need to know that it's convenient for people. And I think that you mentioned several cities who have higher rates and so forth, Grand Rapids, Lansing. We aren't those cities. We aren't anywhere near like them, and I'm not sure we want to aspire to be Grand Rapids or Lansing. Ann Arbor is a unique town, and we need to keep it that way with support for our unique businesses and sidewalk affability. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, anyone else?
The Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council met last night, and among other things, we spent a lot of time going over each one of the parking recommendations with regard to increases in January and in the fall, and we want to fully support that direction at this particular point. It's obvious, that no one likes to raise rates, particularly in a time of economic hardship that today is. But we strongly support all of those increases, which are necessary not only to keep up the maintenance repairs within the system, but also to meet what has become the DDA's increasing financial obligation to the city. Today, most of us recognize that our parking system must pay for itself. That wasn't always true. It didn't used to pay for itself. It was run by the city, and of course it depended upon the amount of money that was available to put into it, but also the city was taking a lot out of it and putting it into the general fund. And the parking structures at that particular point were all falling apart. And at that particular point, many of us were raising signals with regard to what it is that should happen with regard to that system. But City Council's wise approval of the DDA's taking over the parking system in 1992 has changed all that. I think the DDA has done a superb job rehabilitating, maintaining, and developing our parking system and doing something that everyone thought was impossible, and that is making it financially self-sufficient. But it's not just about raising rates and increasing revenues that we have to deal with regard to what it is that the parking increase happens to be. When the DDA was renewed in 2003, it recognized that parking was only a part of the larger objective, developing a full menu of transportation options, what has come to be called Public Parking and Transportation Demand Management Strategies Plan. And we support that thoroughly. It's about the full range of alternative transportation and management involving all elements of city government, the AATA, of the university, and the entire community. And we admire you very much for your direction. And of course, that has led us also to build a parking structure. And it's obvious in the statements today, I mean, that the nature of that construction has caused some problems to nearby businesses. And we consider that to be very unfortunate. We hope that that's going to be over with very quickly and they'll be back to success. At this particular point, we know that the system actually has more people using it than ever before. And also, the downtown is a very vital place. Many of us think it's more vital than it has been in the past in terms of its general sort of possibilities. But this fear of parking increases will always remain there. And I gave to Susan. Susan gave me back some copies today. I'll pass these around. Some of you may have already seen them. But in terms of parking increases, I just want to note, here's an article from April 24th, 1970. An increase in parking rates is being opposed by the Downtown Business Association, which says such an increase would be detrimental to business and in turn to the city. That's when they were raising it from 10 cents to 20 cents an hour. And I've attended many of the meetings over the course of the last couple of decades. In each particular case, it was always a threat. It was going to be the undermining of the whole system in the downtown. It hasn't proven to be that. But we also admire, along with that, your direction regarding making those kinds of improvements in transportation that will have the whole system coherently operate in a way in which it will be a lot better in all ways for the downtown, the community. I'm just going to pass around some of these articles that were taken out recently from the Ann Arbor District Library, which now has all of the Ann Arbor News information and photographs. It will indicate some of these, including one which is very wonderful. It was in 1938 when they first put the parking meters in, where a lady stands in front of a car with a sign on the back of her car saying, "Keep parking meters out. I will not trade at any store that has a meter in front of it. Join us." A campaign against parking meters. I'll get these at the end of it.
Thanks, Josie, for keeping the archives. Next.
My name is Andrea, and I'm here with Pangea Piercing, and I would like to argue the point that downtown is more vital than it's been in a long time. There's at least 4 businesses with going out of businesses signs on their windows on Liberty alone. And Ann Arbor without David? Really? That makes me want to cry. I can't even imagine. I love this town. I opened my business here on my own dime 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and to think about not being part of this colorful community, I can't even understand that. I can't even understand that. Do you not understand that we want to be here? We want to be in Ann Arbor. We don't want a CVS on every corner and a Starbucks on every corner and a well, there won't be any McDonald's because we all remember what happened when there's a McDonald's over on the other side of the diag, we don't want a cookie-cutter city. This is not a cookie-cutter city, and that's exactly what's happening. The same thing that happened in East Lansing. It's going to be a cookie-cutter city where it's a chain store everywhere. What's going to happen to our small businesses? Really? You raise the parking? People don't want to come down here. They will not come down here. We're opening another location in another city because people have said, we will not come to your business, although we want to, but we don't want to mess with the downtown parking. So we're taking our business elsewhere. We are missing that much business that we're going to go elsewhere. Thank you.
Next. Okay, going once, going twice. I wonder if a member of the board would move to adjourn the public hearing until our December meeting?
So moved.
Moved and supported. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We will reopen the public hearing at our December meeting. Okay, are any communications from DDA members at this point?
I just want to point out one something that was something Herb had to say, and the suggestion that the parking meter rates not be raised until after the parking structure is finished, I think is a very good suggestion. And would point out that the plan that's been presented to the DDA, whether we decide to do that or not is in the future. But the parking meter rates would not increase. They would increase by 10 cents an hour if that were enacted in September of 2012. And by that time, the structure was so almost a year away before the parking rates on the street would be affected. There are some other rates for the monthly parkers and things like that that would go up in February if this plan is approved. But as it's written, the hourly rates for the meters wouldn't be enacted until 2012 again if the board decided that's what was going to happen.
It's the same for
Other comments from DDA?
Roger? I'll go through this in detail in my report, but that also applies for the rate increases in the structures and the surface lots.
So for the average parker, it just stays the same, the daily parker?
Correct.
Okay. Until then.
Real quick, I'm going to put on a communications hat from this. We all know the data and we all know the revenue potential and revenue needs, and we're all aware of that. We've done the studies, we've looked at the demand management reports, and we all know this was coming, and we've done our best to communicate it and take feedback as we will, and this is what's happening. And as Ray has pointed out, this is what has happened as long as there's been a system and someone somewhere made the decision to start charging for parking. Do we have the problem of expensive parking or relatively expensive parking, or do we have the problem of not enough parking? I think both have negative consequences, to be sure, and the balancing act of a complex system is you balance it. A couple of things I think it's worth pointing out, though, is while we need the revenue from this to pay for the parking and pay for the other things, these are choices that we've made. And I know sometimes we are asked to do things that we don't all want to do but feel we need to do, be it best practice or best politics. Moving forward, I ask that we do remember that we do try to err when we can on best practices, and the demand management program report and the recommendations had quite a few things in there that this, takes a first stab at, but takes a first stab in revenue generation. Doesn't have, these are all bullet points that say increase. Now, you could make the claim that anything that isn't increased is now a discount, but it's certainly not clearly presented in that way here, and looking at what's covered, it's pretty much across the system increase. So as we think about these things, and I'm glad that we are able to, for some representatives, create a workable system that does not include evening enforcement. Well, our plan calls for that. Our economy, in terms of its makeup and the use of the system, would suggest best practice, perhaps not best practice, politics, to have evening enforcement. It also calls out for a lot of other things, and that may have to come back on the table. We have to keep these things in mind as we move forward, and we have to keep in mind that although the system works through strong and open advocacy, it shouldn't negate the need for open and transparent inquiry. There are many people here that aren't represented as well as the associations or even the businesses that were able to take time out of their busy daily schedule to come here. I manage at a company that has 80 downtown employees. They see no benefit in lack of evening enforcement. They only see a raise to their cost of doing their job. And because there isn't a strong advocate for companies like that to come and talk about that, I'll do it. So I want to remember that we have a plan. We have recommendations in the plan. This is a part of it, and therefore I'm supportive of it. It's not all of it. And as we move forward with these kinds of things, if we think about only the necessity and forget about the choices we've made to get to that necessity, we lose sight of the best practices of the system, which we all donate considerable amount of time and attention to do so. We're likely going to be yelled at no matter what we do. And knowing that reality, we should keep in mind best practices inquiry.
Thank you. Other communication? Okay, we now have the part of the agenda for audience participation. At this point, we can take up to 4 people, maximum 4 minutes each. So is there anyone that would like to address the board?
I'm back. A couple things. I mean, you know, again, I just want to reinforce the thought that, you know, this is a separate agency, and it needs to act independent of the city's financial woes and city's matters, and really refocus on its mission statement to help the vitalization and development of downtown. It's not there to help fund the gaps in the city budget. You know, it just, sorry, but that's just not why this body was created. You know, earlier, you know, Ray Detter, I respect the man to the tilt. I think he's a brilliant mind. He's an asset to the community. But I think there becomes a tipping point where, yeah, you can go from 10 cents to 20 cents, 20 cents to 30 cents, 50 cents to 70 cents, but you're going to get to a point of no return. And we're reaching that point. And there has been talk about how we're compared to other cities, and our rates are, you know, in line with other cities and cheaper than some. But the fact of the matter is, we're a university town. And some of our bad decisions are bayoued by the fact that we have Mama U here and her billion-dollar budget every year to provide jobs and services and all the other intangibles that keep this city afloat and keep it from facing some of the other problems most other cities are facing. So let's have some respect for the fact that our success, to a large extent, is due to the University of Michigan. I mean, in fact, my business right now, especially since the last 2 years of construction, have knocked out access to our business, especially during the evening hours. My business in the evening is down 30, 40%. You know, that's fine for a month, a week, 6 months. It's going on 20 months. You know, that road we told would be reopened by Art Fair of 2011. Now we're told it's not going to be open until St. Patty's Day. That's another whole different thing. But the fact is, I just really want to caution this board. I mean, there's some really bright minds here. You guys take a lot of time out of your day and life to do what you do. I think you have all the good intentions, but I think there are some bad decisions made. And I think we need to be careful of not to make further bad decisions to cover up previous bad decisions. It's time to cut your losses and make some good decisions. Now, I don't know the ins and outs as well as you guys do, but I have a feeling that some of these rate increases are due to the fact that previous financial irresponsibilities have caught up with today's balance sheet. So, you know, you're going to reach the point where you're just going to drive off people from being here. I mean, the fact is, downtown isn't as successful as it is because of decisions being made by this board, or even being by me and some of the downtown unique businesses that are struggling to be afloat right now. We're a successful city because we have one of the best universities in the world in our backyard, and let that be known. That and don't. I mean, it's time to make some courageous decisions, and it's time to live within our means. You know, I think that, you know, if the idea of building a $50 million parking structure was brought up today, it would be voted down.
Thank you.
I would just like to reiterate, Mr. Clark, what you were discussing, that you have 80, you're sort of representing, you feel the people from larger size businesses need to be represented in terms of them having to park, later, and, this more money being taken out of their paycheck. Because a lot of businesses, and everybody keeps saying the downtown, well, that for me really I think about the downtown area where you have the parades and you have little shows and you have all these different things that take place, which is wonderful and keeps it alive. But if you go down the Liberty corridor, which is pretty dead, and they've tried to think of different things, but nothing has worked. So you did make the decision about the parking structure. So I think the point of what you were saying is that their responsibilities, the city has to move forward with its growth, but do so with caution. So you made a decision to build this gigantic parking structure. You don't even know if you're going to be able to fill it. You don't even know if you're going to be able to pay for it. But you want to, raise rates as soon as possible. I mean, I appreciate the fact that the mayor has, thought about, like, maybe that is a possibility, maybe waiting on the rates to be raised. But you don't even know if you're going to fill this gigantic hole. And that's prime parking. It's just 25 feet farther away than parking on Liberty. So why don't you see how much money that brings you before continuing to burden us, who we pay very big taxes, very high summer taxes for this city. So I think you do have to look out for people, and I'm sure you try, because you have to try to please everybody, and it's not possible. And you have to grow, and not everybody wants to do that. But you're going to have to look at what's going on now so the city can grow and not kill one of its main vital areas. So please, just as you make decisions, just think about the ramifications, because it is becoming generic. It is becoming generic, and maybe you want that. Maybe because CVS can pay you the rents, not the rents, the taxes that you require. But people aren't going to come here just to go to CVS. So just be more thoughtful, please, in your deliberations. I know you are, but even more so because it's very critical for those delicate businesses and other workers that are coming. How much could they possibly make to pay all this parking? And they'll probably have to park in this lot, 4 stories underneath. And I'll be interested to see how many of you will park 4 stories down first. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more time, I'll come back real quick. I did want to say, like Mr. Clark said, I appreciate the fact that no matter what you guys do, somebody's going to yell at you. Somebody's going to be upset. Totally get that. And also, too, I might be unpopular with some of my neighbors, too, by saying that, I recognize that we need to build more parking and stuff like that. No problem with all that. My whole thing is, I'm saying almost as a marketing strategy, if anything, I'd say, let the surrounding communities and people that, not just even the surrounding communities, people that live in Ann Arbor who don't actually live downtown or within walking distance, or maybe like me, I have arthritis and can't actually, reliably walk 3 blocks all the time. Do a deal where it's like, hey, look, we're going to ease the enforcement. We're going to keep the rates where we are. We know everybody's struggling. You can't print $8 trillion and just hand it out and not have it affect everybody's bottom line. Everybody gets that. When we, if anything, just, as a goodwill token to everybody, to the surrounding community, say, hey, look, we know y'all aren't happy. We know everybody's going to be upset. We know all this type of stuff. But, hey, look, we're going to do what we can to try to help stimulate business, and not by taking more or another little piece from the people that use the downtown services. We recognize that, sure, city's got budgets to, fulfill and stuff like that. And we do, people expect a lot of services around here. Maybe even a bit too much. But at the same time, though, we're going to get more money in the end if we have more business. If we make downtown Ann Arbor more of a destination attraction, and make it a little more attractive for people to come down here, we'll get more money in the long run. It's kind of that lost leader type philosophy, like where, you cut your prices on a certain item or two or on a service or something like that to get people into the door, get them into the store, get them spending some money and stuff. If people are like, screw downtown, man, I'm going to get a ticket and I'm going to get harassed by 5 bums from here in my car anyway. Why do I bother? I'll go to Royal Oak, or I'll go to Ipsy, or I'll go wherever, go to Dexter or something like that. If we can convince that person, that, hey, look, downtown Ann Arbor is actually pretty cool. You want to come down? We want you back. Come on down, Then we might be, some of the people over here who are a little more on the edge, as far as the as far as their finances, it might help them, get through these harder times and stuff like that. I'm convinced that, Ann Arbor is a good bet. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't. But we know that it's kind of sad to see that there are places where we can do more for the community and do more for everybody. By just, I don't know, taking a slightly different tack on stuff instead of saying, hey, let's look at the people who have to come down here or have to park down here. Let's look at them as a resource to be exploited. Let's look at them as something to say like, well, they are a resource to exploit them. Let's do it better by getting more of them down here. Take a little bit less from each one of them, but get more of them down here. Encourage that traffic and encourage that come on down and see the freak show. Kind of sorry. But thank you so much for your time, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We have one more slot. As this part, Herb, you're back up.
I'm going to say a little something again. The problem that exists today, will that same problem exist tomorrow? What is the plan for what you built? Whether we agree with the fact that you built you're building this construction, this 4-story parking lot, and everybody that I asked for that's in the realtor business, because your plan was to increase the revenue in the taxes in the downtown area, and I say, what is the projection for the population growth in Ann Arbor in the next 50 years? And without a blink, no one agrees. No one agrees with the fact that there's going to be a big enough population growth in Ann Arbor in the next 50 years to justify the construction of the size of the parking lot that you're building, because the one that was there it was never full. The one that's now here, where the library, where the Y used to be, is never full, rarely full. So, what's the justification? So, I made some recommendations, and other people have made the same recommendations. What are you going to do when it's done? Is this going to go on and on and on and on? It looks like it. What are you going to do after the parking lot is finished? What are you going to keep doing? So my recommendation was build an atrium along the public library. Everybody loves the public library. What does Ann Arbor do to encourage the crafts, the people who are creative in the city of Ann Arbor? Very little. They leave because there's no place to go. Since that fact that building was destroyed and the Y moved into it, there's no place to go. So what do we do to encourage that? So I said, let's build an atrium and amplify the uses of public library, which everybody likes to go to, and encourage and allow people, craftspeople, to put in there, do some constructing work in the build things and encourage people to come. People will come and buy the things that they offer then, because that adds some quality to the Ann Arbor. That continues the spirit of Ann Arbor, which is supposed to be creative and vital and encourage craftsmanship and creativity. It doesn't now. It's becoming a franchise town. Pretty soon, you want to get a hamburger, you have no trouble. You want to get whatever you want to get, but you won't find a newspaper, and you won't find a magazine, and you won't find anybody like who makes instruments or offers a public service for raps and what these people do. You won't find that. So does Ann Arbor have a character? When they did some construction, I saw out in a neighborhood. They said there was foxes and pheasants and even some deer used to come there. And the people that build construction down there said, "Oh, you don't have to worry. There'll still be wildlife coming. Yeah, rats and mice and possums." So is that what we want in Ann Arbor? I don't think so. Thank
you. All right, that closes this portion of audience participation. We will have another opportunity at the end of the meeting for folks to make public comment. Reports from city boards and commissions. Ray, do you have a further report?
I do. In addition to discussing last night the whole issue of parking, we discussed two major issues that we want to report to you on and we want to strongly support. There's been a lot of discussion lately regarding the city's program of 1% contribution to public art. And on Monday, November 14th, it will be discussed in a work session of City Council. We're going to be there. We wish to express our continued support for that program at its current rate. We know there have been many factors that have slowed down the process of putting art in public places. We also know there will always be controversy regarding anything we do in the area of public art. With the recent dedication of the Dreisaitl and the completion this morning, they opened the walkway over there. At least indicates, that there's been some degree of success with regard to that particular program, whether one disagrees with the nature of the Dreisaitl sculpture or not. That public space is wonderful and continue to be a focus of local pride in our community. Yesterday, along with other members of the Municipal Center Public Task Force, I met with 3 artists who have been selected to do the public art which will be inside the Justice Center in the entry corridor. We had 100 applicants. We went through all 100 of those, and we selected these 3 as top-notch. And we also considered very much the issue of local artists, but only 15 of those 100 were local. And these guys that we've selected are actually really top-notch people who are going to create something by next summer. That will be in that side, will largely be a chandelier-type sort of artwork in that central entryway. The percentage of art program we feel is working. Let's give it time and let's keep it in place. On Thursday, November the 10th, after the election, the Village Green City Apartments Plan Unit Development Project, in partnership with the City of Ann Arbor and the DDA, on First and Washington, will be up before City Council for approval of the sale of the land. This is high-density housing development in the downtown, where we want it to be located. City Apartments is not only adding 150 residential rental units of various size, but 10% of those units will be rented to households below 60% of the Ann Arbor AMI. As downtown residents, members of the Citizens Advisory Council are always appreciative of developers who are fully committed to working within the policy framework of our community. Although it's not easy for the developers, we've been impressed with the way in which this project has made the necessary design and parking adjustments required by the DDA and city departments, as well as by financial necessity. Village Green has sought out neighboring property owners and community groups to present their ideas and to gain valuable input. We're only one of them. This has taken a long time. There have been a lot of setbacks and an economic downturn. But we hope that City Council will give Village Green or City Apartments the approval that they deserve to move ahead with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Any other reports from cities, boards, and commissions? Seeing none, any follow-up communications from DDA members? Seeing none, will someone move the approval of the October 5th, 2011 minutes?
So moved.
Okay. Moved and supported. Is there discussion, modification, additions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. Subcommittee reports. Roger, John, and John. Who's going first? Roger?
I guess I get the enviable task of presenting our proposals for parking system changes, which we've just had the public hearing about. Unfortunate that some of the speakers have left, but for the record, there are just a few misstatements I'd like to correct. First, I, as well as a number of my fellow board members around here, are independent business owners in the downtown, and we are all acutely aware on a daily basis of the challenges of independent businesses in downtown. We are certainly, none of us in any way are associated with chains. Two, there was a number of comments made that we should ease off on the enforcement. Should point out that enforcement is done by the city, not by the DDA, although we do now consult and have monthly staff meetings between the community standards and the DDA staff, and we're working on a more plan for enforcement that takes the ideas of parking demand management into effect. we in fact do not do the enforcement of the parking meters. We do not write the tickets. Third, as has been pointed out by a number of members, that we are not at this time proposing that we put into place nighttime enforcement. Susan and I had several meetings with representatives of Main Street, and I think quite useful in that clearly the biggest concern about nighttime enforcement is not so much the paying the parking charge for evening use, it's the concern about getting a parking ticket. That sends a really unpleasant message to potential customers. And we heard that. I think there are some technological changes. There's a lot of technological change in the industry right now. I think we want to evaluate that technological change. I think we want to have some more time to work with our community standards people. And at some point there will probably be fees charged in the evening for parking. We would like that to happen at a time, if financially possible, when we can minimize the impact of parking tickets. But that's a ways away, and it's not part of the proposal for the coming year. Having said those, I'll go through so everyone is clear on exactly what we are proposing. There are a number of rate increases that are fairly specific, not general. These are increases that have not taken place in these particular rates in a number of years, generally. And we are proposing these go into effect the beginning of the year. And I will briefly go through these. Meter bags, the bag meters when construction companies or whoever, developers, need to have space to do construction, is proposing to go from $5 a day, $5 a day increase from $15 a day to $20 a day. There are premium monthly parking spaces in the structures for a specific, to guarantee a specific location. We are proposing those go up $5 a month from $175 a month to $180 a month. Art fair entry is currently $10 during art fair. We propose to increase that $2 to $12, which seems to be what the private sector is charging for parking during art fair. In both Liberty Square and Ann Ashley, after 3:30, from 3:30 in the evening and on weekends, you can get in for a $2 entry charge. We're proposing that be increased to $3 for an entry after 3:30. The 415 West Washington, the old maintenance yard, monthly permits, we're proposing those go up $10 a month from $80 to $90 and increase the daily rate from $3 per entry to $4 per entry. The First and William lot, which is just west of downtown between William and Liberty, the monthly permits there we're proposing go up $10 a month from $105 to $115. Proposing on meter bags on Sundays and holidays. We waive the meter bag fee for not-for-profits, but on Sundays and holidays we have to pay people to come in and put those in place, and we are proposing a fee for to cover our cost of bagging those meters on Sundays and holidays. Not charging for the bags, but the cost of actually putting the bags in place. And those are actually all the proposed changes we are suggesting to begin at the beginning of the year. These are, again, very specifically targeted. They are all rates that have not increased in a number of years. We are then proposing nearly a year from now, in September 2012, increase in hourly parking in the structures, 10 cents from $1.10 to $1.20. Increase the hourly parking rate on surface lots, also 10 cents from $1.30 to $1.40, and increase rates at the parking meters, 10 cents an hour from $1.40 to $1.50, and the monthly parking pass in the structures from up $5 a month from $140 to $145. Again, these are proposed to go into place next September, just about 11 months from now. That's the extent. nobody likes to have parking rates go up. We do have a obligation to operate the system at least a break-even level. The cost of doing that is approximately $16 million a year. We have debt service that we have undertaken as the DDA, not only for the new underground parking structure, but for the rehabilitation of a number of existing structures. And we are obligated to make that debt service, as well as do something many communities don't do, is maintain the structures. I appreciate that Ray pointed out that before the DDA took over, the parking system was in very bad repair. Indeed, several structures had to be torn down. We now have one of the best maintained municipal parking structures in the country, and we intend to keep it that way. And this is where a lot of communities are saving money, is by not doing that annual maintenance, which runs about $2 million a year. So we are trying to balance the desire not to raise rates with the financial demands we have, the fiduciary responsibilities we have. There have been certainly some comments about why do we build another big parking structure. I won't go into all the details on that, but certainly 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we started looking at this, we saw a parking system that was nearing capacity, and that if we're going to be in continued development and continued density in the downtown, there was going to have to be more parking, or new development was not going to take place. A couple of statistics that emphasize that. If we look at hourly patrons in the lots and parking structures, that's the people that come in and pull a ticket, not the monthly parkers, and just the lots and the parking structures. We are now have approximately 450,000 more people a year coming in and pulling those parking tickets than we did just 5 years ago. And indeed, I'll jump ahead to my parking report. Indeed, in the last 3 months versus the same 3 months a year ago, hourly patrons have gone up 6%. There is a huge demand in our system, and it has been growing steadily for the last 5 years. Without a new parking structure, overall business would not be able to grow in the downtown. So I will be glad to entertain comments.
Just excuse me. You said there are 450,000 more users of the system in a year now than there were 5 years ago?
Yes. Correct. Just the lots and the structures.
Right.
I didn't know that.
Sandy?
Just curious, we had heard a lot about the demand management system and looking at different streets that would, or areas that would create greater demand, higher price versus some that are off. And it looks like we have stepped away from any sort of implementation on that. I'm sure that
Actually, I have in mind that we are looking at, we did look at stepped approaches in the metering. The lack of e-park stations throughout the downtown limits that somewhat. What we are doing is looking at the low usage parking meters that are on the fringes and going to turn those into what we're calling park and walk meters, where they will be, instead of the normal 2 hours, they'll be 10-hour meters and they'll be half price. So we're trying to look at the areas in parking that aren't in big demand and try to make those much more attractive to the public.
Or as Jeff Larkham said about EMU's parking system, they don't have a parking problem, they have a walking problem.
So is that's not in this proposal, we're still looking at that?
We are still looking at that, but I think unless we find problems, we'll look at implementing that in the next year.
And we wouldn't necessarily have to go through a whole nother, present to the city, and this is what we're doing?
No, because we'd be actually decreasing rates rather than increasing rates.
Okay.
Did I miss it? What have I missed?
No, you guys did a fabulous job. But I was just going to add to the answer that you gave. In fact, we've got many dozens of these meters already. They exist on North Ashley, North First, and South Division. And they've been working wonderfully, actually, for the last couple of years. We are just now branding them, part of our communication effort. And we've expanded the number and also the visibility of these meters. And so this is a strategy to develop a concept that we've been describing, which is expanding the demand throughout the system as opposed to concentrating it in just the core area. So they're already in existence, and as the rates go up in September, these would go up incrementally as well.
Can we put that in as a bullet point, FYI?
Sure.
Going to the working session to show that there is aspects of the demand management that is moving revenue to more in-demand spaces and away from those.
That is part of the
Absolutely.
presentation.
Okay.
Excellent point.
So it's
Excellent.
worth putting in on what's being communicated to the press and the public.
Exactly.
I just wanted to emphasize another point, because the two dates were, I think, talked about but never put in the same sentence, about the parking rate increase being September 2012, which is indeed after the opening, or at least anticipated opening. Always put that anticipated in there, anticipated opening of the structure.
Correct.
And if I could just go back, I'm still astounded by the 450. I wasn't at the committee meeting when this was all figured out. We also know there are more people using the Go Pass, and there are more people cycling into downtown with the increase we've had to put out all the. So there's a whole lot more. There's 450,000 more visits in one way of looking at it, maybe more to downtown than there were 5 years ago.
Yes.
So the usage of downtown is increasing pretty dramatically.
That's what the numbers say.
That's a great number.
It's great metrics.
It's remarkable given that we've just been through, in 2008, the bottom fell out of the economy in the last few months of the Bush administration, and given that we're having this increase over that time period, that's amazing.
John, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that, that the census, the 2010 census says that we've also had a 30% increase in downtown residents in the last 10 years. 1,000 more people. Thank you.
Newcomb?
Let's see projected net revenue implications if all of these proposals are put in place for next year in 2012.
Do we have?
I'm hoping we've done the math. If we're saying we need to do this, do we?
We have definitely done the math.
All right, so how much money does this bring in? And how does that reflect in our current 2010 budget? If you don't want to answer that now, we can answer it
I
down
don't
the
have
road.
the numbers right in front of me, but yes, we took an extensive look at it.
It wouldn't affect our current 2010 budget at all.
No, our 10-year budget. Our 10-year budget.
10-year plan.
Right, so if this is going to bring in X, and it's going to offset existing, perhaps deferred maintenance, or perhaps housing fund things, if there's going to be implications to the 10-year budget that perhaps gives us some flexibility that we don't currently have, I think it's worth pointing out so we can think about other than, hey, we need to do this, but we're not going to tell you how much it's going to bring in or why.
We are in the process of revising the 10-year plan based on these proposals right now. We know what we anticipate to bring in. Of course, you never know when you make a change what the actual impact will be.
Well,
and
the 10-year plan actually, I think, is a little bit more aggressive. We tend to budget for a little bit more aggressive parking increases in that we tend to delay parking increases by 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And so the 10-year plan would tend to have just a slightly more aggressive revenue stream than the current proposal would
Well, right
suggest.
now we're trending an $800,000 surplus to budget for this year, right?
Correct. And
so
that
that's
would-
money we could probably put to good use, given all of our other limitations.
And that obviously is has to do with usage, and most of the time the budget is considered to be relatively static. Neither dramatic increases or dramatic decreases in use of the system. So obviously, in terms of that 10-year plan, given the data that we have now, revising it based on the current use levels is, I'm imagining it would cast it up a bit, but obviously Joe's got to get his green eye shades on and crank out the electrons of the Excel spreadsheet to see what. But
it's hard at work doing that.
Yeah, and it would be. I mean, not that it shouldn't be done. Obviously, it should, but it would be over that 10-year period. I'd imagine it'd be fairly modest in terms of whatever that shift is. But obviously, modest increases over large volumes create nice increases or decreases depending. on
And
which is
short-term gains of even $1 million makes this a lot more palatable to a lot of people if they knew that we were going to immediately put that money to good use.
Absolutely.
And not just filling a hole that we already have.
Sandy?
In reflection of other times that rates have been raised, did you see drop-offs in activity in the downtown and Parkers? Have we seen dips that fall, that...
As far as usage of the system?
Yeah, right. Does the usage
Well,
ever go
we
down
have-
because of that?
We have not seen the usage go down since I've been on the DDA board, which is 7+ years now. We have seen a few periods where it's been flat, but generally it has increased. And we have put in, as you probably know, in the last 3 years, a series of annual increases to help finance both the 5th Division and the underground structure. And we have not seen any drop-off in demand. Right in 2009, 2010, my recollection is things were flat for a little while. But we are now, again, seeing, pretty steady increases in demand.
We can't tell if that's economy woes or raising parking rates.
Not, Ross, yes.
I think of the articles that Ray passed around, the one that's really interesting to me is 1971, where rates were literally doubled, and it also happened right at the time that the Briarwood Mall opened, and that Main Street was literally dying because the retail was gone and it hadn't been recast as a restaurant center. And so, things in terms of the downtown, if there was a desperate time in the downtown, that was it. That late 60s and early or mid to mid 70s time period. So, and it's kind of interesting to think about, both in terms of there was an economic downturn at that point that happened soon thereafter. Parking rates were doubled, and there was a huge shift in the way that retail business was being executed in our community, and obviously the parking system survived that. And I see Andrew Crewley wasn't taking notes when I was saying that. So.
It must not be very important.
There's the endorsement. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the time.
Just a teenager hanging out the back.
I was. Shh, don't talk about what I was.
John wants to get a word in there.
One thing that we'll have to continue to work on is getting out sort of the main sort of big message of really what we're doing with the new parking structure. By building a new, large, centrally located parking structure, I think, as Dave Askins mentioned last week, is the idea we can say we got parking, and it's probably the first time in a long time that Ann Arbor can get out there and say that to people to come downtown, and that's really the first domino in getting more people downtown, and just what the folks who were here earlier were saying. And I think it's so important that we just keep remembering to encourage folks that this is really a great thing. This is going to do something very positive for all the folks who've been trying to come downtown for years. So that's one piece. The second piece is the ability to have growth and have different kinds of growth and encourage, whether it's people living here, we're already seeing people living here, businesses, all the rest of it. The other thing that will happen too that folks have to keep in mind is that because of the investments that have been made in the parking system, not only building the new structure, but the improvements to the existing ones, they're an investment, they're bonds that will start to get paid off in time. And so there'll be the opportunity as time goes on to sort of manage the costs. I mean, there'll be a point at which we won't have to be, investing in those capital costs as much. It'll be more of a shift towards maintaining them. Combine that with better transportation into town and all the different forms of how to handle the parking system. We always have to keep in mind, I think our job is to look in the future. What is it going to be 10 years, 15, 20 years from now? As much as it's painful for folks in the short term, and a lot of us have small businesses downtown that felt it too. It's our job, it's our responsibility to look at the future, and I continue to feel that it's incredibly important what we're doing here. We've got to do what we've got to do in this next few years for managing expenses, but there's a very bright light at the end of the tunnel. So I want to kind of help us all remember that we're going to have to just keep reminding folks, because part of the problem folks have is that stuff's complicated. I mean, there are a lot of levels, there are a lot of layers to it. People tend to look at what's happening right in their backyard, and rightfully so, but we've got to keep encouraging folks. There's good stuff.
Russ, in terms of that long-term vision, the fact that these parking spaces went underground, which is where the more progressive design indicates that parking should go. And it would be great if the parking system became used less 20, 30, 40 years from now because of mass transportation kind of opportunities, or more people living in the near downtown and pedestrian traffic was being up. And we could, at that point in time, when the Maynard Street structure becomes not maintainable anymore, remove it and put commercial space in its place, because we have the parking in the underground kind of opportunity. So that that was part of the thinking that went into the decisions that were made those months and years ago as we were doing those underground parking. But boy, I'm with you in terms of complete sympathy for all of the businesses that are negatively affected by construction. Construction is never fun, and I always blame architects.
John?
Well, since we're on the topic, I think it's really important to remind ourselves of why we're doing what we do and building a new structure. And I'm again astounded, 450,000 more people, that's amazing. But also the fact that we were looking at a system that was getting very close to being maxed out. And recognizing as well that we've taken down a parking structure, that we have about 170 spaces that are on a privately owned lot that could go away next year. And you continue to wonder when that lot will be developed. So it seems to me to have been, looking back, and even better with this 450,000, it's amazing, a good decision to go in that direction to provide that amount of parking. But Roger mentioned something I didn't want to let go by, and I think John alluded to it. And we heard from 3 business owners. I met with business owners, two of them on Friday, talked about their issues, and they've been severely impacted by the construction. And I think we can't overlook that. We have to recognize that they were here. They obviously have grievances, obviously upset. In fact, they were so upset that they brought a lawsuit against the city back at the beginning of the parking structure construction. And I understand their issues. But it is clear that more and more people are coming down. The numbers are there. But I also want to point out something Roger said about who is the DDA, and I think people tend to forget that. And I'm looking around the table, and there are 6 small business owners here that have their businesses in the downtown area that are selling a goods or providing a service, and they have to come down here, they have to park, their customers have to park here. There are some others of us who work downtown. We have a downtown resident who also works downtown. So the DDA is in just every respect, it is very reflective of the small business community of people who live and work in the downtown area. And I think that gets missed sometimes out in the public arena. That if you all decide that you want to raise rates, you're raising rates on your customers and on yourselves. And I think that's an important consideration. And as Roger pointed out, there's not a franchise among you. Everyone here that owns a business is a small business owner, and then we have to make special exception for someone who runs one of our finest and best nonprofits in the downtown area too, also very dependent on parking, just as everyone else is. So it's important to remember who makes up the DDA.
Further comments on parking issues? Roger, you got more to report on the finances?
Yes. We'll give the quarterly financial report, which I'll try to make as brief as possible here. We'll turn to page 7. I suppose the good part on all this is there are no big surprises here. This is the first 3 months of our fiscal year, July, August, and September. Starting with our TIF, we have received most, although not quite all, of our anticipated TIF money from the city, and we anticipated being just about what we budgeted. Our operating expenses are right on target with what we had budgeted for the first quarter. Capital expenditures are dramatically less, basically because the invoices for the 5th and Division sidewalk improvement, street improvement project have not been received yet. So that we still anticipate that that will be right where we budgeted by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year. It's just a timing issue on invoices. So overall, if you look at the column of year-end anticipated over budget or under budget, we are looking at the moment at a slightly greater net revenue than we had budgeted in TIF. Parking, first quarter year to date, as we mentioned, parking, both usage and income is up a little, up about, if you analyze that, almost $300,000 more than we had budgeted. Operating expenses are right about where we thought they would be, as our direct parking expenses. And again, our anticipated at year-end net revenue, we're actually at the moment looking at potentially as much as $400,000 of net revenue above what we had budgeted, at least at this point. Parking maintenance, very little income so far because this income for this fund comes from a transfer from the parking fund, which has not been made yet. The maintenance expenses are way high because we are paying for the underground parking structure out of this fund, and it is then being reimbursed from proceeds from our bond sale, which have not taken place yet. We have a bond reimbursement of about $2.9 million pending that has not been received as yet. And again, at the moment, we are anticipating a surplus above what is budgeted for the year, but it is, with the construction going on, it is certainly premature to make any assumptions on where we're going to end up at this point. Housing, the major difference in that is that besides interest rates not generating any revenue, the budgeted $435,000 grant to Avalon for the Near North project, we do not anticipate paying out in this fiscal year due to delays in that project. And I, with Joe's great assistance, will be glad to answer any questions on that. The next page shows this graphically, but not in color. Again, if everything were equally distributed throughout the calendar year, everything would be at 25% of the total. But so you can see in TIF, we've received most of our income and hardly spent anything as yet. Parking, our income is 25.4% of what we budgeted, so we're very, very close to what we anticipated. Operating expenses have not are still below what we anticipated on just a quarterly basis. Okay, so questions from anyone? The fund balance details are on the next pages. And if you want to go to the last two, the parking report, which is I alluded to, if you look at September, this is on page 17. If you look at September, our revenues over the previous September were up 13%, which, although we had a rate increase, is significantly larger than the rate increase. And hourly patrons is up almost 6% over the previous September. And on the quarterly report, again, revenues are up about 9% for the quarter. Again, greater than the rate increase. And hourly patrons, 5.6%. So we are seeing, at least in this last quarter, what we were seeing for quite a while up until about 2009, which is a very steady growth in the parking system. And I will admit, a little bit surprising. Now, the only thing I can, in September, there were, 5 home football games, or at least 4 in September. So that probably had some impact on it, but,
Same thing as last year.
yeah. It might have been one less last
Yeah,
year. but
one less.
It was one less, but still, you know,
Notre Dame
that
is way
wouldn't,
less.
yeah, that wouldn't account for all the increase. So, you
It's
know,
only
the
one day.
yeah, the numbers are certainly telling us that demand lately has been very strong in the system, as have revenues.
Further questions or comments to Roger?
Good job.
John Split?
Let me start with the South Fifth Avenue Underground Garage. And sequence 1, which is the dogleg furthest east portion of the garage. Library lane now exists. Sidewalks have been poured. Road surface has been poured. So looks wonderful. If anybody wants to go take a look, you can get a great look at it from behind the credit union. There is a large pour happening tomorrow, which is the plaza level slab in sequence 2. Very large 1,000 cubic yard pour. And I think the weather is going to be good for that. And it's going to be, again, a very long day for them. Waterproofing, backfilled exterior walls continues. The walls need to be poured a certain time distance from the slabs. They can't be tied in until the slabs shrink completely. The speed ramp on Division is being poured today. And my other bullet point is construction of exterior walls continues, and daily concrete pours of columns and walls continue. We are having discussions with our design team and and Chrisman about trying to get Fifth Avenue opened as soon as possible. Those talks are ongoing. We have some challenges with the weather, and we are hoping that we're going to be able to, after getting the slab poured in the 1st of December, get that waterproofed and get the concrete on top of it sometime in January. It's going to be weather dependent. So I think that our goal at this point is to get the slab poured, get it waterproofed, and hope that the weather holds out and we're able to do it. You can pour concrete in the middle of January, but it is extremely, extremely expensive to do so. It's cost prohibitively expensive. We don't have those sorts of dollars to put towards that. But we are working very diligently to try to get the road open as soon as possible. The sidewalk on the east side in front of those businesses should at the very least be finished in December or January. And at a bare minimum, that's going to be what we're shooting for. Again, we're going to be dependent upon the weather at this point. The rest of the garage, the rest of the surface work is going to be finished in the spring after the weather breaks, April, hopefully. But we're going to do all the work we can to make sure that we can get that started as soon as possible. Fifth Avenue status, trees are being planted on South 5th. What block are trees being planted? I'm not.
The 200 block.
200 block, thank you. The punch list that is going to lead to the complete completion of that project is 80% complete. And the other thing that we have going on, a small thing are the ADA ramps. Not small for everybody, of course, but we've completed 11 of those this year. There's still a little bit of paving to do in the streets, and I believe that we're going to finish up the downtown ADA ramps next year, and that's the way that those are scheduled. That's what I have. Questions?
Okay. John Mott, Transportation.
Great, thanks. The first thing I want to talk about is the upcoming vote in the city for sidewalk repair millage. So in doing that, I want to make sure to be very accurate, and so if there's anything that either Susan, I'm going to be you, or Councilperson Smith has to sort of add to clarify for folks, I want to make sure I get this right, be accurate. So actually, to do that, I'm going to cheat it and read Susan's, what she's written up here. In the initial language of the millage intent, number 1, sidewalks adjacent to publicly owned land, such as U of M, would not be repaired under this millage as they don't contribute to local taxes. Number 2, property that is within the DDA would not be repaired under this millage unless it was adjacent to 1 and 2 unit residential. Some expectation that the DDA might fulfill this responsibility. So those were 2 of the key areas of interest concerning the downtown in the initial language. Now, it's my understanding that at the October 17th City Council meeting, the language was adjusted to indicate that if this millage passes, the DDA and city could create an agreement. 1, DDA undertakes sidewalk repairs in the district, and 2, city passes millage funds captured within the district to the DDA to do so. Number 2, total is only about $50,000, not enough for major repairs. This is for minor repair work. And if it does pass, future discussions will be held about, what locations and how it's going to be done. So I think that's how it's affected what we're doing here at the DDA, and I think it probably is a good idea for folks who may not be aware. This is a millage to basically give the city, folks in the city, the option of having sidewalks repaired via the city in this mechanism, as opposed to what's happened in the past where individual property owners are responsible for the cost and the repairs of the sidewalks in front of their streets. So that's it in a nutshell, but I guess I want to sort of throw it out if there's anything else that anyone else needs to add to clarify on it.
Byron, just to make sure I understand what you were saying, the transfer would be about $50,000 as the millage within the DDA, and then it would be our responsibility with that $50,000 to make any sidewalk repairs within the district.
That's it in
the
a nutshell.
basic.
I think it's to be determined.
The slab is lifted, not the major.
I think it's still to be determined sort of who identifies which pieces of work to be done, but that would be the gist of it. Yes, and it's trip hazards. It's those things that need to be done to make sure things are safe. I think is the primary concern.
Sandy or John?
Well, just overall, I don't have a particular position on the millage and want people to figure it out for themselves. But the city, if it's turned down, will continue to do sidewalks in the way they have in the past, although because of the attention that's been brought to sidewalks by some of the groups that are interested in ADA, the ability of people to get around, probably more scrutiny than in the past. One of the things that this would offer is we could have more uniform sidewalks, and they would be fixed in a more timely way, and people would never have to put out whatever they were putting out to replace a slab. I know I replaced 4 at 2 different properties. So there's that issue, and it would make life easier, and it does help in the downtown area. But I think one of the important parts, the approaching downtown areas as well, through the neighborhoods that feed into the downtown, where there's a whole lot of pedestrian traffic, people coming to shop, people coming to eat, people coming to work. Those areas would all be better maintained, and it is a new tax, but it is also, the city would take on a new task as well. So those two balance each other out. And I was glad that we were able to make it so that it would be helpful in the downtown area.
Sandy?
I think it's accurately reflected what you said.
Okay, great. You all set? Okay. Next thing, get downtown. Nancy Short had an interesting thing. She's seeing a change in the dynamics of downtown just by the fact that there are more residents. That one thing that she's hearing in discussions with employees at Google is that there are actually a lot of folks who are both living and working downtown who don't have vehicles, who actually are saying they rarely leave downtown. Maybe they hardly ever leave their building, if I understand the way Google operates. But I think it's interesting because, again, the things that have been talked about this last few years seem to be actually starting to happen. you know, that these folks who live downtown are shopping downtown, they're staying downtown, they're getting rid of their cars, they're using zip cars, or, you know, using the public transportation and so forth. So I think this, you know, was alluded to earlier, 1,000 people downtown. This is being backed up by, you know, information we're getting from Get Downtown. So again, it supports a lot of the strategies that I think we have in place right now. And the last thing is I've got something that's sort of a cross-promotional item. My wife works for the EPA, and she forwarded a message to me about a film that is going to be shown rather soon called Revenge of the Electric Car. And my understanding is that it's a documentary that talks about the shift towards electric cars. And you know, not to steal Russ's thunder, I'm sure we'll hear about it one morning soon, this movie coming up, a review, but apparently there's going to be, it's going to be shown at the Michigan Theater on November 12th and 13th, and the filmmaker is going to be here for a Q&A session. So it sounds as though it's something that, at least at the levels of the federal government, they think could be an exciting and fun thing. So I'd encourage folks to check it out. And listen for Russ's exciting review.
That's right.
It's about to go into full promo mode.
What were those dates again?
Well, Revenge of the Electric Car, the weekend of 11/11/11/11 at the Michigan Theater.
There's static electricity coming on.
So November 12th at 7 p.m. and November 13th at 8 p.m. And but actually, for what it's worth, what's interesting, you know, my wife works in a program.
It was made by the filmmaker who killed the electric car.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Works in an area of global warming, and so a lot of it is looking at alternative means of transportation and so forth. And so, you know, she's been an interesting pipeline for these sorts of things. And again, you know, I think the more that, you know, we can tap into all our resources, and whether it's sort of finding out what's coming down the pike or how to communicate it with the public and all, I think that we need to do everything we can to stay, you know, in front on all this stuff. You know, that's what Ann Arbor, I think, speaking to what these folks came to say earlier about what Ann Arbor is all about, I think is what this is all about. This is sort of looking at what's coming down the pike and really being leaders in how we all live in downtown areas. And so this is yet another piece.
Russ, did you want to add?
I appreciate John's and his wife's enthusiasm for Who Killed the Electric Car coming soon to the Michigan Theater.
Not just to a theater.
For Revenge of the Electric Car.
Revenge of the Electric Car.
Questions for John? Thank you. Partnerships, Economic Development Committee, Sandy?
We start out with having Police Chief Jones and Deputy Chief Cito visit per a request of one of the members of the committee, and just to kind of get a feeling for what really is happening downtown versus the perception of what's happening downtown and crime. As we've heard the mayor say many times that the actual numbers of crimes in all categories are going down, but what we are seeing is an increase in graffiti and an increase in some panhandling. So there's a perception that that maybe isn't really reflective of what's actually going on. They are aware of that. They are taking some steps to have a little bit more activity going on downtown, and being a little bit more aggressive in enforcement on graffiti. So with discussion with some of the business associations, they are supportive of being more aggressive in ticketing and enforcement of the graffiti that's happening. So basically, it has been a complaint-driven system before, and it will no longer be solely complaint-driven, but they will be actively asking people to help clean up. And I know that the DDA has stepped up again, and the program that we've had over the last few years, where Anderson Paint and Fingerleaf Lumber are providing at no cost to its businesses the wonderful product called Elephant Snot to remove graffiti, and and also some paint products, I believe, to help to cover it up. So, we know that graffiti kind of begs more graffiti, so getting rid of it faster is one of the key things to try to knock that down. So that was the way we started our meeting. We then went into reporting on the process of the redevelopment of the surface parking lots in the downtown area, and we got a review of what the Leadership and Outreach Committee was doing. And this is a committee that is somewhat like of a steering committee for this process. And it's a very exciting bunch. It's a bunch of people that are not typically around these tables. They're not necessarily, they don't serve on lots of other boards and commissions, so there's some different voices and different viewpoints. And what I found was really exciting was that we began by kind of rolling out a public process that had been very roughly framed. And they immediately said, I don't know what audience you're going to get with this, but you're not, my friends wouldn't come to this, my family wouldn't come to this. And so they immediately challenged our presumptions of the way we've always done things. And this is why we wanted a different set of eyes. So I think that it's a good group, and they bring a fresh perspective that we've sorely needed, because we certainly have not been successful in some of the other approaches that we've taken to do some of these redevelopments in the RFP process. And this is going to be it's going to be a fun road, and they're going to help us get to people that want to participate, just don't necessarily know how. So at the meeting, we talked specifically about describing the vision of where we want to get to in this process. And we had an assignment, which I'm going to share with all of you and let you kind of think about it a little bit. But the vision, and we have a couple of blanks where we have words that we'd like to fill in ultimately. But building on the conversation that we're having, we gave ourselves a vision assignment, and we encourage all of you and our audience members to think about this as well. So on November 2nd of 2031, which is 20 years from today, the Ann Arbor community was clearly successful developing these properties. The way we know this is because there's a great deal of blank taking place. There are lots of people doing blank. What we see is blank, and we are enjoying blank. So,
can we put graffiti in?
Russ, you can do whatever you need to do. So there was a lot of different brainstorming in both the outreach committee and the partnerships committee about how this goes forward. But some of the words that I wrote down, I heard playing, shopping, music, entertainment, talking, laughing, smiling, strolling, visiting, socializing, living, learning, urban sophistication, destination, and human. So I think it was just kind of a fun way to say what is it that we're looking to accomplish, and I think that the short answer is more of what's working now, just kind of more of it. But anyways, I thought it was a fun exercise. And let's see, the next Leadership and Outreach Committee is Monday, November 7th at 3 p.m. Then we had some reports and updates. AATA was at the table, and they continued planning for the new Blake Center. The library provided an update that they continue to be very busy, and that the construction is not necessarily affecting their patronage numbers. Planning Commission updates from Tony Darazinski, and that the Varsity Project is approved. It is heading to City Council, which is yet another several hundred residents. So when we talk about the 1,000 residents that we hear from the census, remember that is a point in time of early 2000. We are now 18 months beyond that, and several more projects approved and underway. So, that 1,000 residents, probably in the next year from now is double that. if not more, with the other projects coming on. So that's more and more humans. Our next partnership committee meeting is November 9th at 9 a.m.
Questions for Sandy? Comments? Okay. Other DDA business matters. John?
I had a couple things I wanted to inform you about, but just I wanted to follow up on, and something I said at the Mayor's Downtown Marketing Task Force yesterday, which a couple of members asked me to pass along. And we're working, by the way, we had a good conversation, I think, about graffiti issues and about the, I also spoke with the chief today about looking at dumpsters. So just a warning for businesses downtown, keep the dumpsters in order because people can begin to look at them. But also, I was been at a number of neighborhood association meetings lately. It seems to be the season. And I was over in the area off of Hill Street, close to campus in there, and a gentleman who has had a lot of problems in his particular part of the neighborhood over the years with student rentals and how families were being displaced. And he used something that I had never heard anybody say before. He said, the steamroller has been stopped. And what he meant by that is homes are coming on the market in his near-campus neighborhood that are not immediately being snapped up by investors. And there's actually some evidence, anecdotally again, that he told me families are having an opportunity to look at these houses now and to move into them. Now, maybe some of that is the economy, but the people, if you talk to residential realtors in the city, Ann Arbor real estate has turned around and they're selling houses. And so I thought that term, that the steamroller has been stopped, is very interesting, and he attributed it to more of the student population living in the downtown. And at the same meeting, another resident who owns income property said that they were not having trouble renting their income property, but they thought that their properties were well maintained and attractive to people. And of course, the rental rates that they could offer were quite a bit less than the downtown. So a trend perhaps emerging that we'll see some of the ability of younger families to come back into some of these prime areas in the near downtown. I also wanted to follow up on the transportation stuff. And I was at a relatively, what I thought was an important conference. I was one of the last speakers. The governor was the first. Also speaking at the conference were John Porcari, the Deputy Secretary of Transportation, Joseph Sazbo, who was the Administrator of the Federal Rail Administration. But I took something away from it that I wanted you to point out to you. The sponsors and one of the speakers was Rich Studley, the Chief Executive Officer of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. And this is an alliance that is formed for rail, the Michigan Environmental Council, Michigan Railroads Association, the Michigan Municipal League, and the Michigan Chamber of Commerce has really, what's happened, and then when you look at the speaker list, you had a Republican governor, you had the Senate Democratic leader, Gretchen Whitmer, you had two representatives, one from the Senate and one from the House, both Republicans, you had a couple of Democratic mayors, a former Republican congressperson, all speaking in favor of rail. And I thought it was very interesting, bipartisan mix of people. One of the things that's true in other countries is that transit is not a partisan issue, but it has been in the United States. And I think there's an effort right now in Michigan to make it a nonpartisan issue, but something we're all interested in. And this has some direct relationship with the nearly $400 million that is coming to rail. And I've said it a few times, but this is probably the very best hope that we have for real good rail transit in our state in the last 100 years, since they started taking it apart at one point, and we're putting it back together again. The governor said some very strong comments. One of them was that commuter rail is a natural for Michigan. And in response to a question, not for me, he said that Ann Arbor's rail station is in the wrong place. It should be over by the medical center. So the governor was speaking both about higher speed rail, 110 miles an hour, and speaking about commuter rail, and talking about the fact that the state director of transportation was there as well, and was talking about the fact that 2014 or so, these fixes should be in place. They've got the money. The track is being repaired in the northern Indiana and the northern Illinois area, southern Illinois area. The trip to Chicago should be much more dependable, much faster than it was before, and that makes our commuter rail prospect. The MDOT chair was there, head of the MDOT was there. I guess they have something like close to 20 cars now, which are being refurbished for the commuter rail, and 3 or 4 engines, and this is also going to entail Amtrak getting all new cars and engines made in the United States. So all of this stuff, the DOT, the federal DOT is determining is going to be made in the United States. It's a very exciting conference. It was very well attended. And I think it does have an input into downtown because we have the potential of thousands of people arriving in our city without their automobile that are going to be able to further to use our downtown, rent a bicycle, take a bus, and get wherever it is that they need to be. So it was pretty exciting for anybody who's interested in the environmental benefits and obviously the transportation enhancements that rail would offer.
Comments? Other DDA business matters? Okay, we're now to the other audience participation. There's a 4-minute limit. Anyone in the public would like to speak to us? Seeing none, I'll declare that closed. I'm going to ask the board to go into executive session to consider an opinion of our attorney. We anticipate no further business after that, Susan. We'll have to go back into public session simply to adjourn. So I just wanted to tell the public, as I said, we don't anticipate any further business after the executive session. So would someone move to go into executive session for purposes of hearing an opinion of our lawyer? John?
Support.
Okay, I think we need a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Newcomb Clark? Russ Collins?
Yes.
Bob Gunzel?
Yes.
Lee Gunn?
Yes.
Roger Hewitt?
Yes.
John Heafja?
Yes.
Joan is absent. John Mowat?
Yes.
Nader Nassif?
Yes.
Keith Orr?
Yes.
Sandy Smith?
Yes.
John Split?
Yes.
We do have a quorum.
Okay. We'll reconvene in executive session in about 2 minutes. How's that?
John?
Do we have a quorum?
Do we have a quorum to close the meeting?
6, 7. We've got a quorum.
You got a quorum. I think you're going to vote on us to adjourn.
No,
you can't.
Let's adjourn, damn it.
Get adjourned till we
I
find
second
somebody
that
to
motion.
do that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we adjourn.
Someone told me that you don't need a vote to adjourn.